Wonderful. Thanks, Claire. Welcome everyone to the May webinar of the joint webinar series Topics at the Nexus of Climate Change, Fisheries, and Blue Foods. My name is Laura Anderson, and I'm the Engagement Project Manager at the Stanford Center for Ocean Solutions, and I support the Blue Food Futures program. This is a webinar series co-hosted by 4 UN Ocean Decade programs, Blue Food Futures, Fisheries Strategies for Changing Oceans and Resilient Ecosystems, or FishSCORE, Sustainability, Predictability, and Resilience of Marine Ecosystems, or SUPREME, and Sustainability of Marine Ecosystems through Global Knowledge Networks, or SmartNet. So I'll let my colleagues and other co-hosts introduce themselves now before we turn to the topic of today's webinar. So Claire, would you like to introduce FishSCORE?
Sure, thank you. My name is Claire Enterline. I'm the coordinator for the UN Ocean Decade program, FishSCORE, Fisheries Strategies for Changing Oceans and Resilient Ecosystems. And this program is building a global network of scientists, fishing sector members, practitioners, policy experts, and we aim to co-develop an approach to sustain marine fisheries, protect ocean ecosystem health, and secure equitable benefits for fisheries in a changing ocean. Thanks very much, and I'll turn it over to Grace.
Hi everyone, my name is Grace Roskar. I work for NOAA Fisheries in the US, and I am representing the SUPREME program, which stands for the Sustainability, Predictability, and Resilience of Marine Ecosystems. So we are also a UN Decade program, and similar to FishSCORE, we're also trying to build an international network. But SUPREME's network the focus is to share information and support robust climate and ocean-related forecasts, predictions, and projections, those types of modeling efforts with the ultimate aim of improving marine resource management and promoting best practices in developing such modeling infrastructure. I will pass it over to Stephen, who is also a SUPREME colleague, but he is here to represent another program as well.
Yeah, thanks, Grace, and welcome everyone. So I'm Stephen Bograd. I'm co-chair of the Ocean Decade program SmartNet. So SmartNet is sponsored by ICES and Pisces, which are 2 leading intergovernmental marine science organizations in the Northern Hemisphere. And our goal is to leverage the infrastructure and partnerships and long-term collaborations between ICES and Pisces to build, again, a global network that could share knowledge and capacity around the themes of climate impacts and resilience and sustainability of marine ecosystems. Okay, send it back to Laura.
Wonderful. Thanks, Stephen. So we're very much excited about our May webinar. The topic is Ocean Modeling to Support Decision-Making. And we have 2 presentations today, one by Cheryl Harrison, who is going to be presenting on the FishMIP project, Fisheries and Marine Ecosystem Model Intercomparison project. And we also have Dr. Catherine Berry joining us today, who will be presenting on the Basin Scale Events to Coastal Impacts Initiative. So we'll start with Cheryl, and she'll present, and we have some time for questions in between the presentations and then some questions at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as they're presenting, and then we can have a discussion about both of the projects. So Cheryl, I'll pass it over to you.
I made a recording because I'm in a place with unstable internet. So Claire's gonna show that, and then I'll be back online for questions.
Perfect.
Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Great.
I'm a First System Model Coordinator for the Fisheries Model Intercomparison Project, and I've been asked to talk a little bit about what we're doing, so I'm going to share that with you today. FishMIP is a global effort to bring fisheries modelers together, both global scale and regional scale. And so I'm going to talk about what that is, give you some background on how these models work for those of you who are not in the know. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this who know a lot about it. I'm going to share some results from CMIP 5 and CMIP 6 future climate scenario intercomparisons, and talk about some temperature versus lower ecosystem driver decomposition work we did, and about our current and future work. So FishMIP is a consortium of over 40 marine ecosystem and fisheries modelers, and there's more than this now. I made this slide a few years ago. So it's been growing, and it's a wonderful community, and we welcome people to get involved. We answer questions about the future of fish and fisheries, seafood supply, marine biodiversity, marine ecosystem functioning. And our goal is to bring together disparate marine ecosystem models to help better understand and project the long-term impacts of climate change on fisheries and marine ecosystems, and to use our findings to help inform policy, both climate policy and fisheries policy. And this is a schematic. Let me put it in my little laser pointer. This is a schematic. We take lower trophic level forcing from marine earth system models like phytoplankton, zooplankton, either biomass or productivity, combine it with temperature, and some models use, different things like sea ice. And then we use those to drive different types of fisheries models that run a gamut of how they do that. These are some of the current and past coordinators. Julia Blanchard is our lead. And if you've ever worked with her, she's a wonderful human being and great to work with. Kelly Ortega Cisternos has recently taken over as the regional fisheries modeling coordinator. And I'll talk more about her work in a minute. And there's a lot of work going on in that space right now. So how do we simulate marine ecosystems with our system models? There's a lot of different flavors of models, and I'm sure some of you, have heard of species distribution models, ecopath, ecosystem. I kind of think of these like in a kind of the more abstract size structured, or the more like trophodynamic models that are taking food. But there's lots of different flavors here. So the example on the left is from a Charlie Stock paper. We use a kind of next generation version of this called FICE that Colleen Petrig runs. And this basically takes two different types of food webs, a pelagic food web here represented by tuna, and a benthic food web here represented, I think that's a flounder. I'm not an actual biologist. And so this is driven by two different types of food. Here it's zooplankton production, and here it's flux of detritus to the bottom. So this is separating different types of food webs into different types of catch, and then the catch is modulated by temperature, etc. Another type of fisheries model is a size spectrum model, and this is in log space from this Ryan Hennigan paper, which I'll be talking about more in a minute. And the idea is you have this producer spectrum, and then you have some rules about how small things turn into large things. So you have growth, which again will depend on temperature and the amount of food, things eating other things, and so diminishing. Big things are eating small things, so they're going away. And then you have reproduction of big things making small things, and so on. And there's allometric kind of relationships of how things respond versus on body size. Again, you all probably know a lot more about that than me. So then just theoretically, how does climate change impact marine ecosystems? And there's a lot of outstanding questions, but here's some of the ideas. So we take our size spectrum, and again, I really like this paper that Ryan did. And you can think that we have a decline in abundance at all sizes. So it's getting hotter. There's less of everybody. We can also hypothesize that large sizes will have decreases in large sizes relative to small. So we have like a trophic amplification of the warming signal. We can also think that there's a lot of breakups in these relationships between larger and smaller animals because of range shifts, changes in spawning, timing, so mismatches in predator relationships, loss of habitat, and there's a lot of questions. It's a complex nonlinear system, so there's always surprises when you're looking at ecological processes. Okay, so here's some results. This is from the Lotza et al. 2019 paper on the FishMIP5. So that's the coupled model intercomparison project, the big IPCC, lots of Earth system models looking in the future. And these are using these RCPs, so resource concentration pathways. Title of the paper is Global Ensemble Projections revealed trophic amplification of ocean biomass declines with climate change, and that's in PNAS. And for this, we don't have any fishing. That's what we're working on now, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And basically, we had two different Earth system models, IPSL and GFDL, and these were picked because they span for CMIP5 the temperature sensitivity, which is like, given an amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, how warm does it get? So the goal was to make this tractable for these Earth system modelers, marine ecosystem modelers, without sacrificing some of the Earth system model spread. So the main results here, so this is the change in biomass over time, and there are 4 different future climate scenarios, and then this historical scenario in red, in black. And in red, you see the 8.5, which is the warmest. And you see there's a lot of spread across the marine ecosystem models and Earth system model results. On the right, this is for 8.5 only. So this is this red span here. And you can see these are all the different Earth system models and marine ecosystem models. And so there's a lot of different things going on. But the main take-home message here is that we have declining biomass with warming, which is not terribly surprising. But it's nice to have it done in this very robust framework. And so these are my 2 favorite figures from that paper. This first one, again, is here we have warming. So it's not time now, it's the different RCPs, which represent the total amount of warming. And then this is the change in the type of biology. So we have NPP in light green, plankton, phytoplankton biomass in dark green, zooplankton in orange, and blue is the fisheries. And so here we see that the bigger you get, the more change there is. That's the trophic amplification, bigger organism, more impact. And then this is putting all of the different models in terms of the Earth system models, the marine ecosystem models together on one plot. And if we look at the change in temperature and the change in total biomass globally integrated in terms of percents, we see this really nice line. So we get a 5% decline in fish catch for every one, my picture's in the way. I have to move myself so I can actually read my slide. Fisheries biomass for every 1 degree C of warming. So that's a nice result. Next slide. So updating for CMIP6, which is the newer Earth system model intercomparison project, this plot shows time on the x-axis and the change in biomass for fish. The main thing that happened from the Earth system model perspective between CMIP5 and CMIP6 is that given the same amount of CO2, the models got warmer. So there was higher climate sensitivity. And that has to do with details of cloud microphysics is the thought. It's really hard to parameterize clouds in our system models. They're very small scale processes, and you have to have these really big grid cells. And so those have improved, and that makes the models warmer. And you see that here, the dashed lines are the CMIP5 ensemble means, and then the solid line is the CMIP6. And so we have more warming, and then we have lower fish biomass, or a more increased decline in fish biomass with those warmer temperatures. And this is in the Tittensor et al. Nature Climate Change 2021 paper. And here we have 2 scenarios, the 8.5 and the 2.6 watts per meter squared warming, end of century warming scenarios. Okay. So the next paper I'm going to talk about was this Ryan Hennigan paper. And this kind of came out of the Lotza et al. Study, thinking about how do we disentangle temperature effects versus lower trophic levels. And again, these models take different, some of them use MPP, some of them use plankton biomass, so they're all a little different. So we call it lower trophic level change. And we basically force them with temperature change and force them with lower trophic level change, and then force them with both together. And we saw how that broke down. This is a table explaining the details of that, which I don't have time to go into. And so if we just look at the driver changes, and I think it's worth talking about these because these are really interesting. So this was done in CSM1, CMIP5, the 8.5 scenario, which is the highest warming scenario. If we just look at the net primary productivity change here, you can see has a much different spatial pattern in the future than the phytoplankton carbon change. So we're seeing differences in how those play out in space. And it has to do with recycling biomes for production versus biomass. So these are two kind of different processes. Like, can those lower trophic levels hold on to their biomass, or are they just dying and getting recycled? So it's really, this is really interesting to me how this is really different. And so when we break down the models, so these are all like different models. So you see like apicosm, feisty, ecotroph, DBPM, they have very different results. Here we're looking at the temperature change in the first column, the lower trophic level change. Here, these are all plankton biomass. Here, these are all net primary production. The DBEM is a more species distribution habitat-based model, so it has really different structure spatially. And then this third column is the temperature and lower trophic level together. So the first thing to notice here is just that there's a large uncertainty, and there's a huge uncertainty in temperature. So we go from, some of this being blue. These are all the relative change in biomass, and these are much larger impacts indicated by the red. And again, whether we use plankton biomass or net primary production, you get different spatial signatures of that. So there's a lot of uncertainty here, and this paper goes into the details if you're interested in how these different models work and how they incorporate temperature into different parts of their fisheries model. So I think that's a really interesting piece of work. So what are we working on now? We're working on a lot. There's been a lot of activity, and I'm going to tell you about a little bit of it. So the big vision that Julia Blanchard has is this FishMIP 2.0. And this is really integrating fishing drivers. So we haven't had fishing up to now. It's been very much like, how does climate impact things theoretically? But we all know, fishery scientists all know, that fishing is the #1 constraint and that all marine ecosystems are overfished. And so this is really important to consider. So we're doing this right now. The current protocol is this historical validation, is putting fishing based on historical fishing into the both global and regional models, which is this track A, the past, and we can do model calibration and improvement that all the fisheries models can think about. Oh, did I get the catch right? Is this, did it work? Yeah, and then the next track is the future, which are these OSPs, or these fishing future protocols. So ocean socioeconomic pathways that Olivier Maury is leading. And both of these papers are in sort of this kind of FishMIP 2.0 paper, and this OSP, this future fishing, are in review at a special issue of Earth's Future that we're doing right now. And there are a couple of papers out. And you can go look at that. It's it's to celebrate the 10 years of FishMIP. So we have a lot of papers that are currently under review. So that's what we're doing. That's kind of the main press of what we're up to. And then the other one is really trying to figure out how to do this workflow from global to regional models. And this has been a struggle. I've been involved with FishMIP for like 5 years, and it's figuring out how to go from global to regional models is non-trivial. And so we have a new coordinator for the regional models, Kelly Ortega Cisternos, who's doing an excellent job. And there's, again, a paper in review in this Earth's Future special issue. And I'm not going to go through the details of this, but I think some of you are thinking about this. And I will say that this is distinct from Roger Griffith's effort to actually do the regional downscaling, so have higher resolution regional models. We're trying to figure out how to do that without doing that, because FishMIP is all volunteer based. It's not funded. So in an ideal world where we have unlimited funds, of course, we would love to do regional downscaling for all of our global areas, but we don't have that opportunity. So how can we use these global course models to do that? And so this is a big thing we're trying to figure out now. And if any of you are working in that space, really encourage you to reach out. You can go to fishmip.org and connect with us very easily. We're going to do some webinars this summer, integrating with NOAA folks. Would love to have you involved. And just a plug for this paper we did recently, kind of in this vein, you know, so I've been going to these meetings with NOAA folks and FishMIP folks and trying to get fisheries modelers to understand how our system models work and how to use them properly. And, you know, people weren't trained in this. So that's what we're working on, is how to get that information out there. And this paper kind of has this really nice flow chart of kind of how to go through using our system model for ecologists. So that's the Showman et al. And Trends in Ecology and Evolution that came out, I think last year. So one thing that my lab is working on with FishMIP is geoengineering, so solar radiation management. And this is a very scary thing that people are not okay with in general, but we're also freaked out about climate change and how that's going to impact fisheries, and especially things like corals that are very impacted by temperature. And so one of the things we're kind of figuring out right now is geoengineering a thing we need to do? And if we do decide to do it, what are the pros and cons? And so we're using this for a FishMIP protocol. And again, there's going to be a paper in the FishMIP special issue in Earth's Future. And so what my lab is working on is leading this stratospheric aerosol injection. And so this simulates how it's basically inspired by volcanic eruptions and how they cool the Earth. So you put some aerosols in the upper atmosphere, scatter sunlight. That's what's visualized here from this nice image from the National Academy's report, and it cools the planet. And so the question is, if we do this, you know, are there weird side effects? How would it work? Would it actually do good? That kind of thing. This is, you know, an image from a paper, Zarneski et al. PNAS kind of, perspectives piece we did a few years ago. And it's basically outlining what are the potential ecosystem impacts of solar radiation management and geoengineering. And the main take-home message here is it's very, very unknown, and we need a lot of these impact studies to inform policy, and we need more collaboration between ecologists and climate scientists. And I should say these couple slides are by my postdoc, Kelsey Roberts, who makes much prettier slides than me and is leading a lot of this geoengineering work. Yeah. And so, you know, is it worth it to get involved? Is it worth it to do geoengineering? And one of the things where we talk about is this nice schematic from Michael Diamond illustrates really well, is these exit ramps. So if these geoengineering protocols do something really bad to marine ecosystems, we would say, no, we're not going to use that methodology. That's a truly bad idea is the terminology we use. So trying to figure out if they're good or bad ideas before we put a lot of effort into researching them further. So we have some preliminary work that we've done using these stratospheric aerosol SAI simulations within one FishMIP model. And this is just an image from the Derek Trittenzor CMIP 6 paper. And we decided to turn fishing effort on after talking with Julia for a while. So we're running it in the same way that we're running our current FishMIP historical fishing protocol, and then we're just going to keep fishing constant in the future. And then these are some preliminary results from boats, which is one of the FishMIP models, which is very sensitive to temperature. And so in this scenario, you have fishing decline. This is in their SSP2 4.5. And then the red line is with stratospheric aerosol injection. And you can see it basically is implemented in 2035 and just stops the decline of fisheries. So you can see, for fish biomass in this case. So you can see that it's highly effective in this model. We want to test it for other models. And that's what we're working on. Okay, so hopefully that's a good timing. I'm kind of doing this. I don't like giving talks not interactively, but hopefully you have some questions and I can connect with you, and feel free to contact us if you have anything, and I can forward you to Kelsey too, who's leading some of our efforts there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for your presentation and for sort of managing all the tech challenges too. I was very grateful that you recorded that so that we could listen to your presentation. We have a few minutes for questions for Cheryl if anyone has questions about the FishMIP presentation.
I'll just add too that we're starting a new project. My lab is working with Howard Townsend to do this regional fisheries modeling to informing fisheries management in the Southeast. And I think there's some overlap with some of the other projects people are doing, and it'll be interesting to integrate with folks. And again, my postdoc, Kelsey Roberts, is the project manager for that. So if you're working on regional fisheries modeling and you want to get in touch, you can contact us and we'd be glad to connect with you. I don't think there's any questions.
I guess I did have one about some of the solar irradiation pieces. Oh, go for it, Viv.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hello.
Cheryl and I have worked on some of the projects that she was mentioning just recently, but we haven't really connected, so it's nice to see your face. You touched on it briefly, and I think it's kind of relevant to all the stuff that you mentioned in the earlier part of your talk about the regional fisheries data and how, because I know one of the issues with FishMIP, and I know it's not your area of expertise, so you know, if this is beyond what you are currently doing, feel free to just pass me off to Julia again. But I'm curious about how we can integrate the sort of more fine scale regional information on fisheries into these broader scale scenarios, because I think that's kind of one of the key missing pieces.
Yeah, and we tried to do that and it didn't really work that well. So we kind of figured out that we don't know how to do it. We don't know. But we don't know how to do it. We got to figure it out. So, you know, with this project we have starting with Howard, my role is kind of like, how do we, you know, let's not use Earth system models for regions that they do a terrible job in, right? So, and then going from that, like just the forcing level through the modeling, and then how do we compare that with the global models and how do we make sense of those comparisons? So I think this is going to be, you know, the next 5 to 10 years of our work is and then how do we feed all that information into management decisions, right? So
yes, I mean, I love Kelly's the slide that you put up, the protocol that Kelly and everyone on that group has been doing about figuring out whether you actually need downscaled models or not. And then, you know, if you do, then great, go down that pathway. But I think everyone's sort of talking about the need for downscaled models. And in many instances in the high seas, or, you know, depending on your species, it's actually, we can use the current global models. So.
Or in the global south where you don't have the expertise or computer time. So but some Earth system models in the coarse resolution, and they're getting higher resolution, and like GFDL is a great might do great. They might be fine. So what we're, you know, trying to develop is tools, toolboxes, and applications. So like FishMIP has these nice like our shiny apps and stuff. So if we can get it really user friendly, so you don't actually have to mess about with netcdf files in Python, and you can have some kind of GUI that can help you figure out if the drivers are awful and you shouldn't use that model, right? And that's kind of step one. I think we're at step one right now. We haven't got past step one yet, really. So so lots to do.
That disconnect. It's that really hard piece that you've got, like, people that with the expertise in Earth system models like yourself, and then the marine modelers that don't quite possibly, well, like myself, don't fully understand, you know, how ESMs and GCMs work. And so, it's that information, like guidance would be so great.
Yeah. And then people start talking about fishing and I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about, you know? So like, And I don't know if there's any students on the call or if people have students, but there's such a need, you know, for more boundary spanners in this space. And, you know, and we're trying to recruit more Earth system modeling folks too, to help us. And it's like, we can explain ecology to you, but we need people who have the expertise. And Yeah, so everybody it's a great thing to get involved with. It's a great effort. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. It was a great talk. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks, Viv. It's great to connect with you. Laura, do we have time for your question, or do you want to move on?
I might save my question for the end just to make sure that Catherine has enough time for her presentation, and then hopefully we'll have time at the end too for additional questions. So Catherine, do you want to shift to your presentation on basin scale events to coastal impacts?
Sure, thank you. I'm just sharing my screen. All right, I think everyone can see that now? Yep. Awesome, great, thank you. Yeah, really great talk, Cheryl. And going back to step one, I'm here to introduce the Basin Scale Events to Coastal Impacts project today, which I'll refer to for the rest of the presentation as Becky. And we're in early days, so I have no results to show, sorry about that, but I'll start, I'll just provide a background and talk about some of the modeling that we're planning on doing. And Dr. Viv Tulloch, who was just speaking, is our project scientist for the modeling component. So she's here to answer any technical questions or any more detailed questions about the modeling, if there are any. So yeah, I just wanted to say too, it's really great to have this opportunity. As I said, our project office has just started to get rolling in early 2024. And for quite some time, our UN Decade contact was someone previously involved with the project. So we're back in the loop and it feels great, and we look forward to connecting more in the future. All right, my slide. All right, excellent. So yeah, as I said, I'll just provide a brief background, and then I'll talk about some of the main components of Becky, the status of where we are today, and some next steps. So we were endorsed by the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development in 2021. And Becky is co-led by two organizations. The first is the North Pacific Marine Science Organization, PICES, and the North Pacific Anadromous Fish Commission, NPAFC. So both of these organizations are intergovernmental. PICES is focused on enhancing collaborative efforts across the North Pacific Ocean, and there's 6 countries involved: Canada, the US, Russia, Korea, China, and Japan. And the NPAFC is mainly focused with conservation of anadromous fish, and countries involved with the NPAFC include Canada, the US, Japan, Korea, and Russia. So the only difference is that China isn't involved with the NPAFC. As I mentioned, we've recently got the ball rolling. This is because we just obtained funding in the spring of 2023. And so we're currently funded by the BC Salmon Restoration and Innovation Fund. This is a joint federal Canadian government and province of BC fund. And we have $1.1 million to get the project off the ground. We have some collaborative partners, and many of these partners are included in our advisory board. So we work closely with the Tula Foundation, Long Live the Kings, which is an NGO based out of Seattle, and they're leading the Salmon Climate Initiative, the North Pacific Fisheries Commission, which is another RFMO, Regional Fisheries Management Organization, and then the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Council. We're working towards 7 of the UNDO sustainable goals, so zero hunger, gender equality, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, and then partnerships for the goals. So I'll just take you through some of the issues in the North Pacific that sort of stemmed the idea behind Becky. So as we're aware, climate change is significantly impacting the world's oceans and marine resources. And over recent years, the North Pacific has been experiencing an increase in thermal anomalies. So for example, marine heat waves, which are shown here. And there are some we're having more reoccurring heat waves. There was one in 2014 and 2019, and these resulted in sustained higher sea surface temperatures. We've also been seeing declines in fish production across the North Pacific. For example, salmon, Pacific saury, which is a priority forage fish species in the Northwest Pacific. And then there was the snow crab collapse as well. And many of these declines have been linked with climate change or warming sea temperatures. Also associated with changes in water temperature, shifts in species distribution. And within the North Pacific, there's a lot of, different countries fishing between, their own economic zones, et cetera, that have been, fishing certain stocks for quite some time. So these shifts in distribution are going to result in, or require significant reconsideration of current management practices. So when it comes to fisheries management, there's limited data being used often in fisheries decision-making, and there's quite often as well this reliance on past information to inform decisions about the future. And within the North Pacific, although there's these regional fisheries management organizations, data is often still siloed and difficult to access. People are working on changing this accessibility, but we're not fully there yet. Another challenge is that consideration of how, changing environmental variables and climate change within management decisions is often minimal. We are seeing a lot of progress in this area as well. Fisheries commissions and regional management organizations are starting to incorporate climate change adaptation into their work plans, and the science committees within these organizations are building it into science plans, but we're still in relatively early days here. Some other challenges just within the broader North Pacific Ocean, as mentioned, it encompasses fisheries that operate on the high seas and cross-national jurisdictions that are subject to these international management arrangements. We have really limited data and observations from the high seas because it's, very challenging to find windows when ships can make it out there and collect data, and then also have reoccurring data sets. So there's limited time series. A lot of them are quite old and limited to specific geographical regions within the North Pacific Ocean. So there's really a need for enhanced scientific cooperation and transparency. So the vision for Becky is to support forward-looking decision-making for fisheries managers and coastal communities in a changing climate. And our aim is to progress basin scale to regional scale research on important fish species, and we're really hoping to fill some knowledge gaps, support fisheries and ecosystem-based management, and then provide decision support under climate change scenarios. The scope for Becky is the entire North Pacific Ocean and then its marginal seas. Currently, the exemplar species that we're starting our focus on is salmon, but we're also engaging with the Pacific Halibut Commission to work on halibut. Pacific saury, which I already mentioned, is a big priority for the North Pacific Fisheries Commission. And we're also considering tuna because it's highly migratory. But really, this will evolve over time. And we'd like to focus on priorities for the different regional fisheries management organizations and government organizations that we work with. So the strategy right now to tackle this broad region is to break the North Pacific into nodes based on fish of interest, and then build science teams within each node. And just touching on what was discussed in the discussion just now, we would like what's been identified as a huge gap, specifically by modelers that we've engaged with in the past, is this need for international coordination domains where scientists can work together. So there were a lot of discussions of how there's a necessity to bring different types of modelers together, get people into the room sooner so that we can build on, for example, the strengths of different models when creating ensembles, and trying to identify strengths and weaknesses early on. We're also going to be building on the collaborations and partnerships that already exist within our leading organizations. So Pisces and the NPAFC, as mentioned, the constituents are already across the North Pacific Ocean, and each of these organizations have a range of different boards and committees, and scientists from NOAA, DFO, and government organizations in the Western Pacific are already involved. So we really want to build on these existing partnerships, but expand them as well. So also have direct working relationships with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, NOAA, universities, NGOs, etc. So these are the main 4 components of Becky. If people have heard about Becky in the past, you may have heard it described as an ocean intelligence system. However, because the scope is so large, each different region and country, they have different priorities and different challenges. So a one-size-fits-all approach is not going to help us as much as we want here. So we're developing a North Pacific Ocean toolkit, and this has been based on priorities that were identified in early engagement sessions. And these will likely shift as well as the program evolves. But to start with, we're focusing on ecological modeling, an integrated information system, targeted research and enhanced monitoring to help fill gaps that are identified, to help validate the models over time, and then facilitation of international collaborations. So I'm going to touch base a little bit more on the modeling, and this is what Viv is currently working on developing. So we've got 2 ideas that we're currently focusing on. The first is the North Pacific Ocean Marine Ecosystem Model Ensemble, so NOMIMI, and this is being based off of the SOMIMI from the Southern Ocean. And we want to develop a NOMIMI to inform fisheries management across the Northwest. And then once this is done, outline a protocol that can be expanded into, for the Northeast, and then build a protocol for the Northwest. Something that's been identified as a gap in the Northwest Pacific is a lack of ecosystem-based models. So we'll start in the Northeast Pacific and then build off from there. The second, is a salmon marine ecosystem model. So we'll be creating an ensemble model for salmon under different climate change scenarios and apply a coupled climate, biological, social, multi-model ensemble, and then explore the implications of different environmental changes to various management questions related to Pacific salmon. So some of the challenges for modeling in the North Pacific ecosystems: determining what to represent, how to include marine mammals in size-based models. As mentioned, there's limited observations in the high seas, and then also a lack of good time series, especially recent ones, and then seasonality. So if anybody's got some ideas here, please let us know. And then I also wanted to briefly touch base on the integrated information system, because this will ultimately be tied into the modeling component as well. So we'd like to build an infrastructure that enables access to climate, oceanographic, ecosystem, and socio-ecological data by linking it to a central data system. And one of the ultimate goals here is to improve the ability to share information, and so that different organizations can collaborate efficiently on research using modern web-based frameworks. So this keeps coming up as a huge gap within the North Pacific as well. There's a lot of different entities working on individual data hubs where, for example, the Salmon Data Discovery tool, where information is going to become open source and available. But this is happening all over the place. So we're looking to create some infrastructure to link these. And then once in place, this data can then be coupled with different machine learning modeling techniques to develop improved predictions for fisheries. So right now, a lot of these deliverables that we're working on are directly tied to our funding, but then also program development as well. So this year we'll be focusing on building the Becky office. I'll be getting to the team soon, but we're quite small at the moment, and we're looking for to expand this. And so, yeah, similar to FishMIP, if there's any volunteers that would like to join our cause, we're happy to have you. We'll also be developing a First Nation and tribal engagement strategy that will be built into the science and traditional ecological knowledge plan. We only have funding until the end of March 2026 at the moment, so we'll be seeking additional funding sources. And there's a lot of preliminary work done on Becky before we had formal funding, so we're really looking forward to re-engaging with scientists, building up some collaborative science teams, and then also continuing engagement with the regional fisheries management organizations. And there is a need for this. So we still have a lot of outstanding questions to help guide our science plan and program development moving forward. So these, include what are the most important questions for managers? And obviously this is going to be different. So we're looking forward to hearing from different groups and then prioritizing based on commonalities between what we hear. So this could be, potentially spatial or predictive information, whether they want dynamic tools created, be able to predict those black swan events, management strategy evaluations for certain stocks, or perhaps more information on dynamic spatial zoning, where MPA should be placed, etc. So we'll see how we go, and hopefully the next time we talk, we'll have narrowed some of these questions down. I'd just like to introduce our team. So there was Dr. Viv Talek, who was just asking some great questions earlier, who's leading the modeling. We have an administrative coordinator, Dr. Nilgun Kulan, and then our communications officer is Camille Jasinski. We're still looking to find a lead for the data infrastructure system. So I will be looking for someone with software engineering, data scientist skills. So if you know of anyone or are that person, please reach out to me, and you can reach us here. There is the main Becky website. This will be updated shortly, and then the contact information for the rest of us. So yeah, thanks very much.